Welcome to Fear and Greed, the week ahead. I'm Sean Aylmer, and as always, at this time on a Monday morning, I'm joined by economist Stephen Koukoulas. You'll find him at thekouk.com, Thekouk, thekouk.com, and on X using the handle thekouk. Stephen, good morning.
And an excellent morning to you, Sean.
Well, it is for a man like yourself because, you had inflation last week, you've got economic growth this week. It's an economist's paradise.
It is. We've got even though this is the first week without an RBA meeting on the first Tuesday of the month, we have a lot of information still. We're still digesting all the news from last week. We had the local inflation numbers, US inflation numbers on Friday night. There's a whole lot of stuff that we're still sort of trying to work out where we're at. But this week, GDP numbers and a whole lot more. Great fun. I love it.
Okay, so let's start local and let's talk about the inflation numbers last week. Also, retail trade, partial indicators. Where do we end up at the end of last week, given all that information?
We ended up with the market expectations for interest rate cuts being reinforced, I suppose, that even though inflation came in annual terms at 3.4% in the monthly indicator, which just as a reinforcement to everybody listening, is not as complete and as broad as the quarterly indicator, but it's still got lots of information about price pressures. It came at an annual rate of 3.4%, so unchanged from December. But the markets were looking for a little bit of an uptick because a lot of prices are adjusted on the 1st of January. There's a bit of seasonality there. It didn't happen, or it did happen, but it was offset by falls in some food prices, meat and seafood, and holiday travel was down. So the inflation momentum is still squarely to the downside. It probably was below what the Reserve Bank were assuming. So that rate cut expectation that's been building for several months, both globally but also here in Australia, just got a little bit of a shot in the arm.
Fantastic. Let's talk about this week then, because it's a big one. GDP, December quarter. Why do we care so much about old information, Stephen?
It is old information. Here we are in March, early March, and this is the December quarter, which of course is October, November and December divided by July, August and September for the quarterly growth rate. Wow, what was happening way back then? Look, it does matter because it is really an indicator of all of the spending, the investment, the exporting, the importing, the level of inventories and these sorts of things in the economy. And it is so comprehensive that the assessment that the Reserve Bank, Treasury, us economists do, it rebuilds the base on where we think the economy is going. So if we get a shock in the GDP numbers later this week, and just say it's a shock to the downside, the economy's slow, and we get a weak number there, then that rebasing of where the economy was at the end of 2023 has big implications for where we're going in 2024. So that's why it's important. Market is looking for a weak result, just by the way. There's a few partial indicators coming out on government spending and whatnot in today and tomorrow before we get the number on Wednesday. But it does look as if GDP is going to be sort of 0.2% for the quarter, about 1.2, 1.3 for annual figures. That's weak. And I think that's going to just sort of reinforce the market pricing, as we were discussing a minute or two ago, of rate cuts coming through from the RBA, in a not too distant future.
But it's kind of what is supposed to happen, isn't it? Given that we've had so many rate rises last year.
Yeah. Look, in fact, what's happening now, when you hike interest rates, and remembering that interest rates have gone from 0.1% at the low point to 1.1 to 2.1 to 3.1 to 4.35, GDP has slowed from 0.9 to 0.5 to 0.4 to 0.2. The unemployment rate's gone up, as you would assume with a slower economy and rate hikes, from 3.4 to 3.6 to 4.1. And inflation has gone from, in monthly numbers, 8.4% to 6 to 5 to 3.4. So this is a win for Economics 101. This is a thing that I can sort of hold my head high and say, gee, isn't it lovely when economics works? And we've had the policy tightening, weaker growth, higher unemployment and lower inflation. 3 cheers for Eco 101.
Fantastic. Just quickly before we go, building approvals, and the reason I'm interested in that is that the construction sector is such an important part of the economy.
It is, and it's this housing shortage that's the issue too from the building approvals numbers. Look, month to month, they're incredibly volatile. If there's a couple of big apartment blocks approved in a major capital city, they can jump and fall. Last month, we had a 9.5% decline. Look, the market's looking for a bit of a bounce back. That there is some tentative evidence that the federal government, state and local governments trying to fast-track zoning and the approval process is starting to to work a little bit. I don't want to overstate it, but there's some evidence that it's working. That probably feeds into an expectation that we will see and desperately want to see a rebuild in housing construction, because that's an absolutely fundamental part of addressing this housing shortage in terms of buying, renting, and all the rest of it. So hoping that the building approvals numbers are just a little bit stronger than the last month.
Fantastic, Stephen. Enjoy your week, especially Wednesday, especially those GDP figures. You'll be at that all for hours, won't you?
I'll be pouring over it. Look, there used to be like 68 tables of data,
Wow.
and then there's a whole lot of subset. I'll be here till midnight Wednesday night.
Fantastic. Enjoy your week, Stephen. That was economist Stephen Koukoulas, better known as The Kook. You can find him at thekook.com and follow him on X using the handle The Kook. I'm Sean Aylmer, and this is Fear and Greed, the week ahead.